Tommy Best, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle, and I get to catch up with Sahaj from the band Ra. What's going on, man?
I'm good, dude. How you doing? I'm enjoying Miami at the moment. I'm working here.
Oh, yeah? Always working, man. You're a busy guy.
Yeah. It's been great.
How are things down in Miami?
Extremely hot, but nice, you know. But I used to live in Florida. I lived in Boca Raton for a couple of years. But, yeah, I'm here doing a rock record with this new artist from Canada, a girl. So it's been pretty fun.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah, man. So, you've got such a long resume. There's so much I would love to touch on. But usually when I have somebody on for the first time, I like to get a quick background. Do you remember as a little kid what you originally wanted to be when you grew up?
I mean, I've been singing since I was 5 years old. I sort of rebelled against the obvious destiny. When I got to high school, I started like painting and ignoring music and not really being super focused on that. But senior year, I had an English teacher who really wanted to do like a paired up group of two final project, and we were doing it on Hamlet. I was very, very, very into Shakespeare at the time. I worked at the Delacorte Theater in Central Park as an usher, so I used to watch the plays all the time. Very, very into Shakespeare in general. And the last two people to get paired up was me and my friend, this guy Nandi, who I didn't know at the time, but he was a guitar player. So we were like, what should we do as our final project? And he was like, I don't know, let's write a song. And I was like, okay. So me and him wrote a song at my house. I performed it the next day in the class. I sang it. They asked us to do it twice. And then I worked with that guy for 10 years and ended up learning how to play guitar through him and all this other stuff. And then ultimately, instead of going to my high school graduation, I ended up going to my first recording studio. And it was sort of a one goal trajectory from that point on.
Nice, nice. And then before like getting into that class, and like you said, you were kind of rebelling against music and doing art and stuff, but what was some of the earliest like music that you would hear like around the house that you were like, okay, this is stuff I'm into?
Well, I was the youngest of six, so my brothers and sisters all liked a lot of 70s and 80s stuff. I remember very vividly Carly Simon, Cat Stevens. My brother, my next older brother, Marcus, was a huge influence into me because he was into like fusion jazz of the 70s and 80s. So like Stanley Clarke, Chick Corea, all of that kind of like very heady instrumental music. And that stuck to me. Even at a very, very young age, I used to like fantasize about the stories that I read into these pieces of music from this one band called Return to Forever. They had an album called The Romantic Warrior, and I sort of lived through a lot of that. He also introduced me to Peter Gabriel and Prince and the Police, which were all sort of like huge, huge influences on me growing up. But my dad was an older, was a Russian man, and he was very into classical music, Tchaikovsky and all of that stuff. So I got it in all directions. I mean, honestly, my sisters loved a lot of Carly Simon and James Taylor, all of that stuff. So, I mean, I was getting the soft, folky music while I was getting the fusion jazz with the classical. And it was, a very eclectic environment.
Nice. And then when you were saying you would sing at like 5 years old and stuff, what were some of your go-tos back then?
My mother used to, my mother put us all into like performing things, but my mother used to have me do everything from rapping Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. She used to make me do that in front of the friends and neighbors. She used to like when I did The Devil Went Down to Georgia, Charlie Daniels Band. She used to make me do that. And then I would just sing any song that was, kid songs, little kid songs, stuff like that, Mary Had a Little Lamb, all that garbage. But as soon as I got old enough to sort of like listen to music on my own and put a record on a record player without anybody listening, I started adventuring very quickly into hip hop and rock. So the first things I got into were, and this is while they were new, was Run DMC, LL Cool J, all of that stuff. I lived in Queens, New York, so I was like, those were my hometown bands, right? Because they're from Hollis, Queens, and LL's from Queens. And then very, very short after that, somebody handed me Paranoid, Black Sabbath. And I remember listening to Iron Man a million times in my underwear in the living room and just, fantasizing about this gothic universe that all this music existed in. I mean, Ozzy was my first and absolute best gateway drug into metal. I mean, I immediately went through, once I got through the Black Sabbath stuff, and even with James Dio singing, I started jumping into all Ozzy's solo records and Bark at the Moon and Crazy Train and all of that stuff. So Ozzy was really my first rock love.
Nice. And then you were saying, like, when you were in high school, what was it? What was his name? Nandi?
Yeah.
You kind of became friends with him, learned how to play guitar and stuff. When was it that, other than that song that you guys got asked to play twice in school, when did you start, like, performing out in, like, the local clubs?
Well, like I said, I mean, I didn't go to graduation. So we literally, the very next week after doing that Hamlet song, I wrote my first song with him. And we started, recording at home on a little 4-track reel-to-reel that my dad had. And I started trying to figure out how to make things sound good. I mean, 18, 17 years old. By the time we graduated high school, we were doing, Monday nights at CBGB's was like the open band night. And we would play, our songs, and we thought we were amazing. And, certainly weren't bad. That people definitely liked us. So it was that, it sort of like got us started playing in New York. And then we continued to play around New York City at the Bowery Ballroom, at Mercury Lounge, all those places.
Nice. And then when did you start performing as Ra? When did that come together?
So me and Nandi worked together from like the late 80s to, I would say, the mid-late 90s. And then when we split apart, he had his own band, and I continued sort of the genealogy of that band continued on and became Ra. But I didn't name it that till 1998. And it was as a result of getting a sync for a movie. So there was everybody remembers the original Carrie, but there's actually a sequel to Carrie called The Rage, which was Carrie 2, The Rage. And we ended up getting the end title sequence for that. So when the credits came up, the song came up. It was a song called Crazy Little Voices, which technically is the first release by Ra in 1998.
Oh, wow. Nice. And what was it that guided you, why'd you pick the name?
Well, so my favorite artist, ultimately, if I do the pyramid, at the very, very top is Sting. And Sting had a thing where he would write about the moon all the time. So he has Walking on the Moon. He made an album called Nothing Like the Sun, which is a Shakespeare reference to the moon. He has Moon Over Bourbon Street. He has all these references to the moon. Well, I just wanted to be like Sting, so I would always write songs about the sun. So I kept on writing and putting the sun into it. And then I was at dinner with a girl that I was seeing, and I had all these different names. And one of the names that I had was Ra because it was the sun god. But I was sort of convinced that it was too simple of a name and that there had to be 20 bands called Ra already at that point. But it turned out there really weren't. And that's how I ended up with the name, because it was really a reference to the sun, and I was including that into the music. The funny thing is the Egyptian flavor that Egyptian Indian flavor that I eventually put into the music was actually a result of naming the band Ra. So the name came before the Arabic influence.
Nice. And then you said, like, instead of going to graduation, you went straight to the studio.
Yeah.
Now, you were learning how to play instruments with your friend, but when did the programming and mastering and mixing and all that stuff start coming along?
I mean, I was your quintessential bedroom rocker through my years. You know, I started out with like I had the craziest recording setup. I had a realistic mixer from Radio Shack. It had 4 channels into 2, and I had a hi-fi VCR and a cassette deck. So what I would do is I'd program my Roland 707 drums and I would record that into the cassette deck, and then I would run the cassette deck through the mixer into the hi-fi VCR and overplay the bass. Then I would run it back into the cassette and overplay the guitar. Then I would run it back into the VCR. And meanwhile, I'm mixing like by ear. I'm throwing these things in. Then I would sing it and I would do it. Now, mind you, every time you went back and forth, there was a significant amount of degradation. But, you know, I would do it 4 or 5 times until there was a song there. And that would be how I recorded. Eventually, I ended up saving enough money to buy a 6-track Sansui recorder, which I replaced later on with a 8-track Tascam recorder. And that's when I started taking more studio stuff seriously. But ultimately, I became friends with a hedge fund trader in the early 90s who wanted a recording studio in his house in Greenwich, Connecticut. And he gave me sort of an unlimited budget to put a bunch of stuff in his house, which rapidly grew into a full-fledged recording studio, which I was the only one using. So it was pretty amazing. And I was able to sort of like learn how to EQ, learn about compression, learn about mic placement, learn how to mic drums, learn how to mic a cab, how to do vocal chains. I did all of that, self-taught, trial and error. And then later on, when I started getting, you know, record deals and people were putting me in the room with people that were far more experienced and capable than me, I started just siphoning off their intelligence.
Nice. So yeah, so this guy had you gave you pretty much a blank check to build a studio.
Yeah.
Then when you started working with artists, did you have to bring them there, or then by the time you were working with artists, you got your own place?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even entertain the idea of producing or writing for other people until 2005. So I was already signed to Universal Republic and had put out 2 records with Ra, with Universal, by the time I was even entertaining the idea of writing for other people. By that time, I'd been in studios for, 10, 12 years. So I knew what I was doing. At least I thought I knew what I was doing at that point.
And then, like I said, you got such a huge resume, long list of musicians that you've gone on to work with, like Nothing More and Chad Gray and Motley Crue and even Jessie J. Who's like been some of the ones that you've been most inspired with to like work around?
Well, you left out one of my biggest ones, and that's Starset. So Starset's a band that I've done probably the most songs for. I think we're cracking, as of this new record that's about to come out, I think I have 12 Starset songs that I've co-written. So it's a lot with them. I've done 3 songs with Nothing More, and I produced the vocals on Spirits. I did 4 songs with Motley Crue for the Dirt soundtrack. And I've stayed in touch with all these people. That song that you mentioned with Chad Gray from Mudvayne is one of my favorite things, just because, I had Nikki Sixx in my house for like 3 months, and I absolutely love him and consider him, a great mentor as well. But I was never a Motley Crue guy. So like having him there was sort of, I think it was good that I wasn't a super fan. And it allowed me to like have a good, like a natural relationship with him. But I was actually a really big Mudvayne fan. So when I got to work with Chad, I was weirdly nervous, even though it was later, I'd done already big things. But Chad was sort of somebody that I put on a pedestal. And then, of course, we became really close and friends. We're still friends to this day. But I was really proud of that song because I wrote it specifically for Chad. And I felt like it was a good representation of him and, what I wanted to try with him. He's just a really great dude. He's heartfelt and wears his emotions on his sleeves and just like really, really loyal and a great guy.
Nice. And then what was like working with Jessie J like?
So in fairness, I never met Jessie J, but I have a funny story with that. What happened is my friend Ammo, who's probably one of the biggest pop producers in the world at the moment, he did Lose Control for Teddy Swims. He's like massive producer. Really good friends with him in LA when I lived in LA from 2010 to 2020. he called me up one day and he says, hey, I have this Jessie J song. I need a guitar solo. And I'm thinking, this is pop, right? So Jessie J has got to be a 4-bar, maybe a 4-bar guitar solo. Like, there's no way this is going to be a long thing. So he sends me the song, and Dr. Luke is involved, who's also co-producing. So there's like all these big people who are going to hear me do this guitar solo. And he sends it over, and it's 16 bars. It's like a minute of guitar solo. And I'm like, I lose sleep over this. And I don't know what to do. And I finally wake up the next day and I realized for me to do what I want to do, I have to sing it. So I sang the guitar solo with my mouth, like literally, like I literally sang the guitar solo note for note. And then I learned it on the guitar and played it. And honestly, I love it. I think it's one of the best guitar solos I've ever done. But it was such a challenge because it was so long. You know, it's the last thing I expected on a song from a pop star to do this really extended guitar solo, but it was a really great experience, and I still listen to it a lot lately, and I'm like, wow, because I don't really play guitar solos that much anymore, so I'm like, damn, I used to be good at that.
And then you mentioned like kind of like stepping into like doing movie scores with the sequel to Carrie. What was that transition like for you doing, and like how many other movies have you been involved with?
So the thing with the movie stuff, the most related stuff that I've done like that has been all the WWE stuff. So at a certain point, I would say in the late 2000s, 2008, 2012, I did a ton of WWE wrestler theme songs. And a lot of them were written by Jim Johnston, who was like the main writer for like a lot of the theme songs, but I produced a bunch. So I did The Miz, I did Alex Riley, Dirk Ziggler. I did. There's a bunch of. There was Cody Rhodes' first one, and it was like at least 6 or 7. And I had this one band in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that I worked with called Downstate, and they ended up doing Cody Rhodes' current theme song. So they're making a killing off of that song, which they happen to own. But yeah, for a while I did a bunch of stuff for that. I used to do a lot of music beds for ESPN. During the same period of time, I would just do like music cues, they're called. They're just like small snippets, minute long. Did a bunch of those, probably 30 of those. I really liked that work, but then producing and writing for other bands started to take up 80%, 90% of the schedule. And I left the other 10% to keep my band alive to whatever capacity it's alive. But, now that I've been releasing songs and we're getting some traction again, and I'm playing Louder Than Live in September, I'm talking about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big wrestling mark, man. I've been, since I was a kid. Yeah. And then we just watching SummerSlam this weekend. I had no idea that you had done a bunch of those songs too. That's awesome.
Yeah, for a long time. It was pretty cool. It was very fun. It was, I did one of my favorite things that I did, which was, this gives you an idea how they run the business a little bit. It was a bit sneaky. Jim calls me up and he says, hey, can you do Randy Orton's theme and Batista's theme? Can you do them acoustic? And they gave me like no money for this. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll throw it together. And I had Aaron from Gemini Syndrome sing Randy Orton's theme song, and I sang Batista's theme song. And it was pretty funny because I send it in, and then it turned out to be WrestleMania's 12's main promo. So every commercial had me singing on it, and I was like, I got like $1,000 for this, But that's how they always did that. They was like, yeah, can you throw this together? We're just going to use it for the ins and outs of a commercial, and then it's on like a million times. I got no money for it, but it was so fun. It was going to do, and I love those songs.
Yeah, me too. They're part of my my memory as well. Then I didn't realize those were you. That's awesome.
Well, I did the acoustic versions of those songs. I think
the acoustic. But I remember those.
Terry did the Randy Orton one.
Yeah, how well they do those packages. Yeah, to promote the event, and then whenever they, like you said, they keep playing it, that it gets like embedded in your head, and it really gets you like into the product and excited for the matches and stuff like that. I was just, flipping out about Brock Lesnar returning this weekend at SummerSlam and everything. Are you a fan at all, or are you just? I
liked,
since they don't pay you.
I think I liked it when I was a kid more. I think I was, really into, what was the Sumerian guy, the Samoan guy, the really big dude back in the day, 80s.
Umaga or no? Yokozuna?
No, he was like I don't remember, but I remember like the Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage time period, like that whole Roddy Piper. I was more into it back in those
Wild
days.
Samoans, maybe.
Yeah, whatever. But I was into like all of that. Jimmy Snuka too. I was into that guy. So like that time, that was my time period to like actually like wrestling. When I was making music for it, it was more sort of like, okay, I get it, but it wasn't my universe.
Gotcha. And then speaking of like you just mentioned, your band, you're going to be playing Louder Than Life this year. I mean, like I think was it last year I ran into you there? I don't remember.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, maybe it was 2 years ago or whatever. But is this your first time actually playing it now?
Yes, I've never played Louder Than Life. And in fact, I sort of went back through the entire touring history of my band, and I don't think I've ever played one of these kind of festivals. I've done a lot of radio festivals, like amphitheater type festivals, where maybe there's 2 stages, maybe 3 stages, but nothing like this where there's 2 main stages and 4 side stages and 100,000 people walking around a giant field. Never really played anything like that. So I'm sort of stoked for the experience. And I'm also just like, I've been touring a little bit, just keeping my chops up a little bit. And I feel sort of confident about, having a good experience and providing entertainment on a level that I've always sort of hoped I could.
Yeah, well, like we were saying before we went on the air too. It's like I remember, I forget what tour it was on, but I seen you perform at the Winchester, here, a local venue, and I mean you do have an amazing voice, man. And I saw the influence you were talking about with Sting with that Police cover that you do as well. That was amazing. Yeah. Which one was that again?
It's Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. And I chose that particular song because like the Police are like sacred to me. So when I was going to pick a song to do a cover of, I was like, let me pick like sort of like a silly love song, because otherwise I felt like I'd ruin it. Because I have like a thing with covers. I always feel like people come out and they're really proud of their covers, but they're not as good as the originals. And I just was like, I don't want to do a song that I'm like in love with, like Message in a Bottle or Roxanne, which is never going to be as good as what they do, So I picked that song because I felt like it was sort of an innocent song to do, and I actually like the version we do.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it, man. Highly recommend people checking it out. And then that brings us to your current single. I know I'll be in trouble, but with Jamie if we don't, talk about
100%. Yeah, I'm actually really proud of this whole batch of songs. So I mean, essentially what happened is, we put out Intercorrupted in 2021. Really proud of that record. Like that was, one of the things that's always happened with Ra for me is I think I made good records and then they sounded okay, or sometimes I made records that sounded okay, but the songs were, like for me, Intercorrupted, which is something we put out in 2021, like it's the best of both worlds for me. Like we were able to make a great recording, have really, really great songs on it. Everybody made an input. Everybody had flavor. And I felt like it was a good way to sort of end that version of Ra, which was, all the original guys. And that was really, really cool. It was 20 years later. And I just felt really positive about that entire experience. And then I started playing some shows, and the guys are all older dudes and they all have lives and nobody wants to be in a band. So I was just like, hey, let's just amicably end that phase. And I'm going to start putting out songs on my own. And part of the reason, I was writing all these songs for other bands that were modern and cool and ready for Octane-ish, if you want to say. And I was like, well, I sort of want to do that for myself. So in my brain, it was sort of like a rebranding. I changed the logo and decided to put out, songs that felt newer. I changed the tunings. I went to really low tunings for a lot of these songs and did a lot of programming and just sort of experimented. And I felt really confident about sort of the direction, and I was easing the fan base into it slowly, and they were starting to get it. Each song outperformed the song afterwards. And then it became time for this one. And this song has always been designed to sort of give, to do exactly what I'm doing now, but to give a little bit of flavor of the old Ra in there too. So this song's called Devil Mind. It's a commentary on not only just the AI situation in the world, but also just sort of like how we use technology to compromise ourselves. And that's what the idea of the devil mind is, sort of like that little voice in the back of your head that says, no, go ahead, just just rely on technology even some more. Let it figure out what it's supposed to. Let the car drive itself. Giving up more and more control, and ultimately being in a position where it's death by a thousand cuts kind of, and it just becomes this thing where we're unaware of how much power we give away over a period of time. So that's what that song is sort of about. And I feel like I wasn't 100% sure when I started it that it was exactly what I wanted. And then when I was done, I was like, I think this is good. And then the audience really, really responded quickly. And I was like, oh, okay, because this is getting a multiple of streams more than the last songs have gotten. So it's been very, very rewarding to have this track received the right way. Yeah,
I really enjoyed it too. And I was, enjoyed the lyric video as well. And it's like, that's probably an ulterior motive, not just being a wrestling fan that I wore this shirt today for this interview, but it's like I got that through, I'm retired military, man. And it's just like I'm seeing so much going on in the world that we can spin this into a whole different episode, so to speak. Yeah. But it's just like I loved how your lyrics and the video itself are just like, yeah, it's like you said, we're giving up more and more control, and the scenes with the kids staring at the screens, it's like our creativity, our passion, that flame is like dying down. We're giving it, this thing's taking it,
And a lot of people didn't get the double entendre or the irony of the video, because so one of the things that I did when I made the video is I actually like using AI, and a lot of people don't understand that all of the raw videos, there are no raw videos that I didn't direct. So like all the raw videos, whether it's lyric videos or whatever it is, going all the way back to the beginning of the band, every video that exists is something that was my concept. I directed it, I edited it, I literally made these things from scratch. So I take pride and actually enjoy the video making process. In terms of Devilmind, I actually went to several AI video generators, and a couple of them, one is called Veo, that's the Google one. That one actually was so good that it was hard to tell it wasn't real. So I didn't use it. I used one called Pika, which was giving me that weird sort of like, it's when you're looking at it, it's AI, even though it's sort of realistic. And I was specifically trying to make the point of mixing the real footage, because all the footage of those kids watching TV, those are not AI footage. That's actual stock footage from a stock video house where it's just kids watching TV. Watching films and screens. And I really enjoyed the process of putting that together. A lot of work went into it. And of course, what happens when you put it on the internet, you get the people that are really angry at you because you used AI to make a video and you didn't use an artist or another person or whatever it is. But I was trying to explain, well, first of all, it's part of the point. And second of all, that, I take pride in doing everything myself. Like at this point, Ra is sort of my universe. I've created it as my own universe. And I really enjoy sort of and controlling every visual aspect of it. Because for me, as like I said, when I went to high school, I actually went for painting and art. I like design. I designed all the logos. I've done all the artwork for the covers. Like I just like that universe, and I like using technology that's available to generate all this stuff. It doesn't make it easy. It takes weeks to make a video, but people seem to think that, that if I use, if I'm making a music video that's 4 minutes long, I have to generate 300 clips. It's not like it's going to be like I press a button and the whole video is just there. It's a lot of work, but nonetheless, I see the sort of like the backlash, and I feel like it's good that people are fighting. And people are sort of struggling with the idea of artificialness. And I also try and point out that there's a lot of artificial things going on at the moment that people aren't even aware of, they're not paying attention to. And that's the stuff that's dangerous. It's easy to point to an art, to a painting and be, oh, that's AI, it's crap. But in 5 years, I promise you, no one's going to be able to tell the difference. And that's when it's going to be much, much more difficult to sort of navigate reality.
Oh yeah. There's so much that I guess I could. My girlfriend sometimes calls me a foil hat, but I pay attention to a lot of stuff that's going on, and like this stuff with like Peter Thiel and Palantir and the basic blank check that they get to over to surveil the American people. It's like, what kind of digital prison are we about to step into? Like you said, we keep giving up more and more control to AI, but it's being taken from us and people don't even realize.
Yeah, and also I have a 10-year-old son, and I watch Sam Altman, the OpenAI guy, in interviews, and he's talking about, he's like, well, they're like, well, what skills should we develop going forward? And he's like, actually, you should probably be focused on adaptability. And I'm like, adaptability? What? That's a skill? Now we're training kids on how to be adaptive because we don't know what the future holds in terms of jobs. We have no idea. I have friends that are like, oh, I'm working on roofs. Don't worry about it. I got my job secured. And I'm like, you don't think there's in 10 years there are going to be robots that can put roofs on? Like, there's going to be robots that can put roofs on. Like, don't assume anything. You better work on your business to the point that when the robots are there, you can afford the robots and you can use them. But I mean, at the moment, there's very little. I mean, a lot of music is being generated via AI. There's a ton of things happening that people are, I think, naive to, that are way more intrusive. People are fighting about politics and presidents and policy while all of this is going on in the background. They have no idea how much other stuff is happening that is ultimately going to influence their kids and their kids in a way that's not even predictable. Like it's I've never lived in a period of life where I don't know what the next 5 years could possibly be like. Like if you told me in 2010 that to figure out what's going to happen in 2015, I could give you a guess. Now I literally have no idea.
Yeah. And like talking about being a wrestling fan earlier, it's like growing up watching wrestling, it's like that's what politics is, but with suits and ties anymore. It's like both sides are working for the same company. They go back to the same locker room and get the same paycheck, man. And it's just
100%. 100%. And it's not even hidden anymore. It's all just like, it's so easy if you spend 5 minutes investigating anything, it's easy to see, well, this isn't what I thought it was. It's pretty, and that's both sides. It doesn't even matter anymore. That's not even part of the equation. Now it's all about the, how quickly can we transform society into something that, I remember Andrew Yang and his universal income, all of that stuff back, 2016 or whatever that was. It's going to be hard for people to find jobs soon because a lot of stuff's just not going to exist.
Yeah, I mean, AI. I was trying to encourage, maybe look instead of going to college, just getting into the trades or something to my kids. But like you're saying, even roofers will be replaced by robots soon enough too. So what is safe?
I talked to a guy the other day, and he said he's already being pitched like these machines that change shingles on roofs. So there's it's going to be we've already, what are we talking about? I think they just started last week or 2 weeks ago the first semis that are on the road that are driverless. I mean, there's a lot that's going to change, and I think in some ways it's good, right? Because it's nice to be able to have something that doesn't get tired, that doesn't fall asleep at the wheel, that doesn't need a shot of coffee to stay awake, that doesn't need to rest, that can just, work on the most efficient level and get things there faster. That should be good for society, net positive ultimately. But, I'm just nervous about my son. I have no idea where he's going to find what's going to be his niche. I mean, I say this with a weird sense of humility, but he's very good looking. And I'm like, all right, well, you got that. Let's work on that because, if you're a good looking kid and you get on the internet, at least we know that's not going away. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's definitely scary times, man, but and like you were saying too, with, being so creative and everything that you've done over the years to learn your skills and your trade, how much have you seen, AI influencing the music industry?
Well, my logic has been 100% always since the beginning of like drum machines. I mean, once we started replacing real drummers, half the records you hear on the radio aren't real drummers. 99% of them are not real guitar amps. A lot of it is all already been replaced by technology. Yes, a human being is pressing those buttons, so maybe that's different from AI, but there's so many compromises in terms of expense. You know, it used to cost a lot of money to make a rock record, and there's not as much money in rock as there used to be, although it's coming back to some degree. But it's, you know, now it's a matter of efficiency to get songs done as fast as you can, because you got to release them every 8 to 10 weeks. It's not, there's a million things that have evolved, and technology becomes, you know, important. I mean, the amount of singers that need autotune. Let's forget about the singers that just benefit from tuning and things like that. There are singers that are famous that require autotune in order to make a record. And that's, you know, is that disingenuous? Is that not sort of, you know, an AI version and, you know, of changing what actually could happen if you stood in front of them? You know, there's a lot of really things that have already existed. And now this is just a multiple of that. Now it's just, hey, I want a song that's metalcore pop with a cool thing, and you press a button and 7 seconds later, there it is. At the moment, those aren't really great, but they're getting better real fast.
Yep. And then, you know, you were talking about your album from 2021, but now with this new single, is there a new album on the way as well?
I have 2 more slated to come out. One of them is a redo of an old song. But I think I'll ultimately start packaging those. You know, we still have fans that want CDs and things like that. So I'll probably make an EP of those 7 songs. And then I'll start on something else. I've been sort of fantasizing. I did a solo record a million years ago in 2012 that I was really proud of. It's sort of like John Mayer, stingy stuff. And I was just, you know, it was a different flavor. I may do another solo record that's just more pop, like more mainstream, top 40 type stuff with me singing. You know, I'm an old guy, but I still sound good, and I'm going to keep doing it until I don't sound good. You know, when I listen to something and I'm like, oh, that sounds like an old guy, I'll quit. Trust me.
When you need auto-tunes, then. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so you're talking about you guys are going to be playing Louder in Life this year. Is there any other tours on the horizon as well?
I'm bugging the Crossfade guys, because now that they're playing shows, and I've been friends with them for a million years, that you know, we went out with them in 2005. I would love to support them on a tour. Those are my dudes. I love Eddie and Mitch quite a bit. So if they decide to do any headlining runs, because I don't think that's something that they have currently planned, but if they decide to do any headlining shows, I'd love to be able to jump on it with them. But also, I'm down to open for anybody. I just don't really want to headline anymore, and I've sort of retired that part of it, just because it's a lot of work, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and I don't have time for that. But, you know, when I went out with Soil and Union Underground beginning of 2024, I don't think I've ever had so much fun. You know, it's just such a great time, good shows, good audiences, really great response, made good money. The whole thing was great, and I just don't want the headache of headlining anymore.
Gotcha. Man, before we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask you some of the questions I normally ask my guests that I have on. I know there's so much topics we could go on and on about, man, but you were mentioning some of your early influences like Run DMC and stuff when you were a kid, but who are the top 3 artists that you're listening to today?
Currently, I mean, I came off, I wouldn't say the newest album quite as much, but the Take Me to Eden Sleep Token record was pretty like in constant rotation while I was driving. I drive from Fort Wayne to Nashville a lot because I work in Nashville, and that's a 6.5-hour drive. So I usually do podcasts, but when I get sick of podcasts, I listen to records. So that last Sleep Token record definitely got a lot of airplay in my car. I listen to a lot of pop, and my apex predator, the love of my life, is SZA. So I'm obsessed with all of SZA stuff. I like Doja Cat quite a bit. I like The Weeknd quite a bit. And then on the rock side, you know, I mean, I had my Bad Omens period where I listened to those for a bunch. It didn't last super long, but I do love those Just Pretend and Death of a Peace of Mind and Like a Villain. Those are great songs. There's mostly pop stuff, to be honest. My son currently is obsessed with K-pop Demon Hunters. And unfortunately, because I've listened to that 7,000 times, I'm now a K-pop Demon Hunters fan. And I sing along with those songs. But those actually it's a great movie, and it's really well crafted, those songs. But yeah, I like the new songs by an artist called Sombr, SOMBR. It's a lot of pop stuff, to be honest. That's what resonates with me. But from a metal standpoint, I'm working on so many things. I'm working with AJ, who used to be in Fire from the Gods. I'm working with a bunch of new bands. Did new Starset that's coming out. I did a song with Attack Attack. So like I get sort of like my metal full. Like I get that fills my metal plate. So I'm not listening to metal on my own time that much because I'm doing so much of it. But yes, I think the last Sleep Token record is probably the winner on the last year and a half of my radio time.
Gotcha. And, we were talking about kind of like our fears as parents, what kind of world our kids are growing up to. But what class do you feel should be mandatory before graduating high school today?
Taxes.
That's the number one answer I get.
Yeah, of course. It's the most obvious answer. It's like, how do you let kids come out of high school and not know that they have it's not even, taxes aren't even that difficult, but of course you have to be taught taxes. It's a ridiculous, the fact that we have to sit through physical education in the way that they teach it and you don't get taught about finances is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. Like you said, yeah, it's definitely, it's almost like it's by design, teach how to spend money and accrue debt, but not how to build wealth.
Well, you said it.
And then who are 3 people who've inspired you and you can credit for making you the person you are today?
Well, I'm going to have my parents as one. I'm just going to use them as one because my parents have been, my parents recently passed, but they both, they were unicorns in the world. They were very, very, very special people to everyone who knew them. So the 2 of them definitely, without them, I don't think I would have I have a very, very stable perspective on reality, in my opinion. And I think it's all because of them, to be honest, because they were just rock solid people. Again, going from an artist standpoint, Sting, without Sting, I don't think music would have had the meaning that it had for me and would have had the transformative elements that I try to incorporate, meaning I listen to a song, I want to be transported somewhere. And that was all Sting to me, like the Police and all of that was very transportive to me. And then I think, in a weird way, it's going to be such a lame answer, but Carl Sagan, because I remember as a little kid watching Cosmos, the original, and it really created the thirst and hunger for science that I currently have. I'm really into science, quantum physics, astronomy. I'm big fans of Brian Cox and Brian Greene and Sean Carroll and Neil Tyson deGrasse and Eric Weinstein. Just all of the people in that universe are people that those are my podcasts. I spend a lot of time listening to science stuff.
Nice. And then before the tape deck and the VCR, mixer that you created for yourself, what was your favorite toy as a child?
Cars, Matchbox cars. I stole money out of my mom's purse to go buy Matchbox cars. I literally obsessed with cars. My dad was in the car business. Cars, I'm my only sport I follow is Formula One. For a very, very long time, the only video games I played were racing games. So yeah, cars.
Nice. And then any message you have for our military members that are currently serving overseas?
Man, it is the most incredible. I got the luck this year to sing at one of the Army events. I sang the national anthem for an Army. A friend of ours is an Army sergeant, but he had me sing for the entire event. I had an entire battalion in a room, basically very, very everybody dressed up in their uniforms. And that event in itself, of course, touring, you meet a lot of soldiers and they tell you their stories and they're all really incredible. That you could ever create a song that got somebody through a tough time is just an unbelievable gift to have as an artist. But when I sang that national anthem in front of 150 guys, Army guys, it just had just massive meaning. And what I always think about when I think of military guys is that there's just a core of honor and loyalty and beauty that is at the base of that society, of the armed forces, that I always think is underappreciated, underrealized, and sort of gets lumped in with the government a lot. And I just think that people need to understand the psychology of knowing that the person next to you might not come back with you, and that you have to, you're there for them and they're there for you at the most extreme and most intense level. It's the most honorable existence in a lot of ways to me.
Awesome. Yeah, very well said, man. Sahaj, man, it was awesome talking with you, man. It was good having you on. It was great catching up, and look forward to seeing you again next time you come through town.
Let's do it.
If for any fans out there that might be new hearing about you and want to follow you and your music and stuff, where would you send them?
Easiest place to find us is the website. It has all the links to social media, so it's just Ra Band, RABAND.net. Been that way since 2002, rawband.net, and it'll take you wherever you need to go from there. You can find all of our socials, Spotify, everything.
Awesome. And then can I ask you one last favor before I let you go?
Sure.
You mind cutting a promo ID for the show? Just introduce yourself and you're
Let's do it.
listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, it's Sahaj from the band Ra, and I'm also a producer. And today I'm on today's Boondoggle.
Awesome. Sahaj, thank you so much, man. It was great catching up with you.
Awesome, dude. Thank you again.
Yeah, take care.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Alright! Listen up! Hold on to your seats! Grab your girls, grab your beers!
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now, here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on